Well, hi, everybody. My name is Hilary Leighton, and I'm the program head for the MA Environmental Education and Communication program. And I'd like to start our session today by welcoming everybody. And thank you, Andrea, for your housekeeping. And thank you, Nancy, for your support. And thank you, all of you, particularly our special guest, Dr. Penn, for joining us today for this webinar. I want to acknowledge that Royal Roads is situated on Lekwungen speaking people's unceded lands, territories. That's the lands of the Kasapsum, the Esquimalt, and the Lekwungen Songhees, ancestors and families, but also it was a gathering place for Beecher Bay and Sook and other nations to come together. We're really grateful to carry forward the lineage of gathering on these beautiful lands. And we hope to keep cultivating rich and deep and intimate relationships with land and the creatures of this land, and increased interconnectedness through our programming of human and more than human life. So we celebrate education that recognizes we are all part of an intelligent, alive, whole earth system, and we treat knowledge as a living presence. And if you hear a dog barking in my background, I have a 145-pound Maremma who loves to greet everyone on the street. So we might be accompanied by giant dog in the key of G. So my apologies for that. I'll mute now while Andrea takes the next few slides.
So welcome and thank you, Hilary, for your comments. So today we are going to be sharing with you information about our graduate certificate, graduate diploma, and Master of Arts in Environmental Education and Communication. You already got to hear from Hilary, but you will hear more about from her in a little bit. My name is Andrea Torres. I'm the Student Recruitment Manager, and I'm going to be co-hosting this session with Hilary and Dr. Briony Penn, that you will hear more from her in a little bit. So the agenda for today is we are going to get to know each other. So you already know a little bit about who we are and why we are here. But I will ask you if you feel comfortable to share anything about yourself, maybe where you join us today, and also any other information that you would like to share with us. We are going to have a conversation with Dr. Briony Penn, and then we were going to talk really briefly about Royal Roads University, program-specific information, and the application process. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to add that information in our chat box. A little note about where we are located. So this is Royal Roads University. It's a beautiful land, as Hilary mentioned. There's here a few pictures, but I always want to encourage people to use the time when you come to the short residencies on campus just to connect with the land. Use the space as part of your learning environment. Royal Roads University has been teaching online for the last 25 years, so we are also really good in creating an online learning community. So we have different tools and different ways for you to engage with the people that you are going to be working through Royal Roads.
Can we invite people to, again, come in the chat and maybe say where they're from so we can hear from others too before we sort of truck along? Do you mind if we take a minute and just see if folks are able to tell us where they're coming in from?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would like to use this time while people are typing to welcome as well Alana. Alana McConaughey is our enrollment advisor, and she's going to be sharing some information with everybody today as well. And we have Derek join us from Edmonton. So welcome, Derek.
Yeah, hi, Derek. We have lots of students that come from Alberta. Yeah, and Sylvia. Sylvia's struggling with sound, I think, so she's going to come in and out through the other browser. Jen is Victoria. Meshu is a fourth-year undergrad at Carleton, taking environmental studies in Ottawa. Lovely. Coming in from Thetis Heights, around the corner. Wow, that's pretty great. That's really close. You know the lands we're talking about, Carrie. And Dennis is from Vancouver, right? Okay, I just always like to know where folks are coming in from. Yes, Carrie, I'm sure you've walked these lands before, if you're just around the corner. Okay, thanks so much. So just good to see where everyone's coming from.
Absolutely. Anything that maybe, I don't want to take from you, Hilary. I know you're going to be sharing more about how the program works around the land, but I just wanted to share with people some of our pictures. And if you are ever in Victoria and you are planning to visit us, please let us know, and we are always happy to take you around our beautiful campus.
And there's Monique, who's coming in from the Tk'emlúps territories, coming in from close to Kamloops now. Angela, in from Mexico. Wow, wonderful. Thank you for joining.
And the next piece that I wanted to share is that Royal Roads Education is created, like we are a change maker campus, and how what that means for our program is that our programs are designed through an interdisciplinary approach, and we want to make sure that our education prepares students and people to address the problems that our community are facing these days. We understand that changes happen from the community and will impact our organizations and the place that we live. And I also want to welcome Sean. Sean is an educator and musician joining from Vancouver Island, near to Royal Roads. So welcome, Sean, as well. So
Lake, yeah, right down the road. Fantastic. Yeah, great.
And we have Britt joining us from Ontario. I'm currently in Nicaragua, a good place to be during the winter time. So with that, I would like to pass to you, Hilary, to introduce Briony Penn.
Thank you. Well, it is my extreme pleasure to bring Briony here with us today, to invite her in, and happily she said yes. She's a very engaged person, so I'm thrilled she took the time to be with us today. And we're going to talk a little bit about Briony's current research. She's going to share some slides with us, and then segue into the part that Briony plays in our MEEK program, which is she is the lead instructor for our field school summer second residency session. And this year it's on Salt Spring Island. But first, I want to say a few things about Briony, if I can. So she is an award-winning writer of creative books, nonfiction, articles, anthologies, chapters. She's a columnist. She was for decades a columnist. Hundreds of articles on environmental issues and natural history, and newspapers and magazines and government publications and news sources. And I started looking at her bio again, and I thought, oh my goodness, won an award from Canadian Geographic for the National Environmental Learning Award. And when I first met Briony, we were engaged in a community mapping project, and boy, did we have fun with that. So mapping becomes part of the curriculum in the field school. And just a little bit more, she's been a sessional lecturer and adjunct professor at UVic for over 20 years, has taught undergrad and graduate programs, lectured across BC about cultural history and stewardship, a founding member of the Land Conservancy of BC, and selected schools that she has designed and delivered curriculum in. A culture and nature camp, a Cowichan First Nations, at Stowe Lake Farm School, Deer Trails Naturalist Training Camps, Kew Science and Culture Camps, Heiltsuk First Nations, Life Vision Quest, Wetlands Institute, BC Wildlife Federation, Gulf Island Center for Environmental Learning, Royal Roads University. So just her vast array of knowledge, and her also the piece that sometimes gets missed is her incredible her aesthetic ability to express herself through art. I call her an artivist. She's an activist and an artist, in this incredibly applied way, because she's spoken to people often through her art, through the expression of the beauty that she creates, and sometimes the despair, bringing forward. Art can speak that which is sometimes unspeakable. So she's also been our Bateman lecturer in the MEEC program at Railroad. So I could go on and on. But I think that would probably start to hover on embarrassment. So I'll pass it over to you, Bri. And thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Hilary. Yeah, I love being back with students. So welcome all. I wish I could see all your faces because we haven't been in the kind of student realm for a while. And I was realizing, Hilary, actually I've been at UVic in some capacity for 30 years. I must better update my CV.
How does that happen?
I know. I remember because I was nursing my first son, and he would cry, and this is sort of an embarrassing, but I would sort of get let down after a 3-hour lecture, and all the students would be just like, oh, because they never had a female prof that was sort of a lactating mother. Anyway, that's probably more information, but it was at a time when it was difficult to present as a mom and a prof and all those things. Yeah. Shall I just jump right into it?
Yeah, go right ahead. Yes. Yep. Go right ahead.
Hilary kindly asked me, and it's a wonderful opportunity, and it looks like you're from all over the world. And this, I'm hoping the subject will just be of interest to at least some of you, but it's also it's a little bit of a story of hope, I would say. And I'm just gonna share my screen here and hope to goodness where is there we are. Share. So one of the hats I wear is that I'm an advisor to the Surveyor General's archivist, which is kind of a weird thing to do. But as a geographer, the historic documents at time of contact are an exceedingly important source of records for so many reasons. And probably the most important is that these documents under Section 35 of the Constitution represent the evidence for occupation at the time of contact, because that is the little narrow clause within the Constitution that gives nations the right to put forward rights and title cases, all hinges on this Section 35. And so the documents that researchers for the nations have gone to through over the last, well, really since the Meech Accord, have been these survey documents, because they're exceedingly accurate in a geospatial realm, and because the legislation at the time demanded that the surveyor record Indian houses, Indian burial sites, and this is the language of the time. That's why I'm saying that Indian, this is the historic language of the time. Indian trails, Indian potato patches, Indian fishing sites, and I can't remember. There's a whole, it was a part of the legislation. And this was because there was a federal directive coming from what was then called the Dominion, saying that these kinds of observances by the surveyors on the land needed to be noted, because the federal government at the time had an obligation to set aside where there was occupation into the reserve system. But what happens is that when you look at these historic records as a collection of what was going on, then you've got this amazing record of contact. And the other thing that they had to do is describe the vegetation at the time. So they also become incredibly important documents for building up historic baselines, for understanding the change in forest types and the impact of industrialization for cumulative impacts. And there's so many different applications of these. Even you can see the extent of the shrinking glaciers by these survey documents. Anyway, I could go on about it, but what I'll do is I'll just show you a few little glimpses of them, and then that can I'll throw it back to Hilary. I first got interested in these documents when I was starting off as a young postgraduate, looking at the mapping of grease trails, because there was very clearly a colonial overlay onto traditional transportation routes. And one of these grease trails ended in the Kitlope Lake and in Haisla territory. And and I was working with an elder, have done for the last 3 decades. This is his territory. This is Waweas. And so I was collecting up some of these documents from the historic records. And I'll just, here is Cecil Paul Wahed, Kanaksiala elder, who's passed away last year, but not before he wrote his best-selling book, Stories from the Magic Canoe. And I collaborated with him to prepare the historical documents and historical context for his stories. And this is a surveyor's photograph when the surveyor is surveying this reserve. And you'll see in the middle, there's a pole. And that pole, this is the only known photograph of this pole that was subsequently cut down and taken away by the Swedish Folksmuseum. And Cecil spent the rest of his life searching for this pole, and indeed found it, and it was then repatriated back to the forest where it is now lying, where it would have been lying. And there's a new pole that's been carved and built, one that stands in the Swedish Folk Museum and one that is standing here at Muscusa. But this just gives you, this was the evidence by which the claim to go and retrieve historic or retrieve regalia, or ceremonial artifacts that had been stolen. And that's so the surveyor's records have many purposes. And here are the early surveyors' plans of the reserves of his childhood. He called them the prisoner of war camps, because people were being confined into these tiny little postage stamps, just because there was a presence of dwellings or burial sites. And so these are some of the first plans from 1890 that were mapping, and you can see they were looking for large spruce, willow, underbrush, gravel bar. So not only were they are they useful to locate all the where the settlement was at the time, but also for reconstructing the vegetation. And often the surveyors would measure the diameter of those trees. And so all this was used by the Haisla Naxla to put forward in some of their comprehensive land claims, and ultimately a large reconciliation, which was protecting 1 million acres of their territory, and is now in a conservancy. And it's the largest protected unlogged temperate rainforest in the world now. And it stemmed right to this. And in fact, the logging was protected because in these plans, they also identify, I should have done another, I think I've got it on the next one. There's the Kitlope. This is the lake that he calls his cathedral. The decision to stop the logging was made on the basis of the ulikin, which is the grease, the greasy fish of the fish trail, the grease trail. And it was where the river narrowed at that settlement site, at that cultural site. And disturbing the ulikin under the Section 35 would have been, they brought a legal case against it. And because of the shape of the valley, it was such a narrow area. It's essentially what led to the protection of this entire valley. There was no way of extracting the timber and resources without destroying this site. So I'm going to pause there. It's a very quick little intro, but it'll give you a taste of some of the great work that needs to be done. And the good news story is that we now have a Surveyor General who, under the UNDRIP, is recognizing that we need to make these historic records available, accessible for free, and they're in the process of being digitized and available for, you know, researchers who are interested in this kind of work of reconstructing baselines, supporting Indigenous-led efforts for regaining their kind of cultural history and their territory. Okay.
Well, Briony, well, I just wanted to make a couple comments if I can. I mean, I've been, you know, writing notes here, and it's such a pleasure to hear you speak about this because there's so many notes that you've hit here. And so I'm just taken by these collections as a bigger picture, as being able to scale back and see, you know, baselines, to see what's changing with climate, to be able to have these historic records that help us track and trace what was. And, you know, I also hear your map, your inner cartographer, your outer cartographer, how mapping has led you in so many ways in your life toward some of this work, but also how moving it is that you worked with Cecil. And, you know, it just sounds to me as if he was able to accomplish so much and such a healing process in, you know, bringing that pole back home. And, you know, that kind of, you know, righting of the wrongs of the past is such deeply important work right now. And when people say reconciliation or, you know, any of these words, regeneration, conciliation, it's hard to know, you know, what that means in terms of actual on the ground things that are happening. So I really feel that you telling that, even just that brief part of that story of Cecil and his stories, it is such an incredibly illustrative example of, you know, some of the good work that's happening. And I'm thrilled that you're part of that work. Of course, you're part of that work. And the final thing I'm thinking of when you're talking about the valley and how they, you know, they could stop the logging because of the life of the fish and the life of the place itself and how important that was. Part of our work touches on the rights of nature, David Boyd's work, you know, looking at rivers as persons and forests as persons, no less alive than any of us. And those are the legal arguments now that are actually protecting areas all over the world. So yeah, I love hearing this. So thank you for sharing that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just flashing on to a few more. I just
Yep.
had one last quick thing, which was when Cecil and I was helping him organize his stories, I said, how do you want to arrange the stories? They have a geographical structure, but then they have a chronological structure. And he said, we have to start with the survey markers, because the survey markers are the first things that we would see that indicated somebody had come into our territory without permission. And when I first started working at Surveyor General, I said, you know, I recounted that story, and I think it was, you know, it's part of like the institutional, the work of the institutions is to understand and you know, about what the impacts of these institutions have had on the lives of, you know, an entire nations across this province.
Mhm.
And so survey markers just always haunted me, because I kept thinking survey markers, and that's why the title is called, you know, cut deeper than knives, and pierce, you know, cut sharper than knives and deeper than arrows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I when you told me about the survey markers, it's just very moving. It's almost haunting, you know. And that's the starting off place, because that's what had changed. That's what was so different. How could we even possibly carve things up that way? Those knives. Yeah, it is definitely our job now to find out what happened and to help, you know, create a more possible world for everyone as we move ahead. I can hardly wait for the students this summer to spend some time with you on Salt Spring and look into some of your work. Go right ahead, Briony. I don't want to take from your slideshow.
No, I'm just flipping through them. So while you're talking, people can just get a little glimpse. So I didn't want to keep talking.
Yeah. Well, I'm just tying it up with field school this summer that, it is a course on biosphere and sustainability, but what better way to, work in that area than to work with lands and peoples and histories and whole systems, looking at whole systems, but particularly so often history is left off. We look at things just now, whereas it really can tell us where we've come from and where we need to go. Oh, those are beautiful maps. Look at those old maps. I mean, you, the map maker, you must love these.
Well, some of them are stunningly beautiful. And there's these are, you can see they're absolutely correct. People can go and absolutely find where that big house. Often these are individual houses and individual graves have been marked. Of course, all of the implications for the residential school, that whole inquiry has been, these documents have proved very important. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And so this summer, could you want to say a little bit more about what might you be thinking about, you're dreaming about? Yep.
Yes. So this summer, I'd love to take you into some of these, starting with a kind of a deep dive both into community, into the natural history, into the long cultural history of this incredibly beautiful set of islands. Our relations, as Waqueenum would say, is the hereditary chief of this part of the, and so from the Sayout First Nation. He always begins every talk with this welcome to our relations. Every island we perceived it as one of our relations, and so that kind of stems to David Boyd's the rights of islands, or the rights of rivers, or the rights of yeah. So Salt Springs, it's an interesting social milieu in that it hasn't escaped all the same problems as anywhere else, but being an island, we often describe ourselves as a difference of opinion surrounded by the sea.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the great things about Salt Spring is that the same divisive elements come up, that they would come up anywhere, but because we're islanders and our children are forced to go to school together for 12 years, and we have to face our enemies, and then our you find your enemies' children are marrying one another, and it's just the nature of it. It's become a little bit of a hothouse for how do we approach some of these thorny problems. And one of the things that I'm most proud about is that there's 2 Indigenous-led initiatives for restoring a lot of these damaged lands, damaged by my ancestors, I might add. For example, my great-great-grandmother was loved the Scottish plants, and so was hurling broom and gorse seed everywhere. And so I spend my life pulling it out because it's had such a profound impact on all the indigenous, all the native species that are species at risk. We have over 100 species at risk on this island, and they're all associated with cultural gardens around the Camas, where there was a whole array of species that were part of this gardened community, and many of these plants were moved and cultivated in association with kind of big spectrum of grassland savanna species that were probably brought from the south as the refugia left. So it's a wonderful little microcosm to look at landscape, the relationship between human migration after the ice left and their long relationships with these species on this land. And I'll bring some of these things like these historic records to provide us a little snapshot on what in fact what were the surveyors seeing as they arrived on these islands.
Mhm. Thank you so much. It just brings up the notion of our kin-centric possibilities, how we can start to, when you were talking about islands as kin, islands as relations, I'm just thinking of, I'm seeing the world, as Alan Watts said, he said, the world is full of people, just some of them are human. And so the plant people, taking care of the plant people and ensuring that they are not overrun by the invasive, the well-meaning enough of our ancestors, but definitely invading and threatening the life of, I can think the time when we met, we were out looking at chocolate lilies and camas together. And, that's a very rich environment that you're in over there. And the students will just love it. It'll be a wonderful wandering. I can imagine that there'll be a bit of wandering during the course. And we're, of course, staying at Foxglove Farm on Mount Maxwell. So that in itself has its own kind of beauty. Well, I'll just trust that it'll just unfold incredibly. I wished I was able to come to field school this year. I have to be back at campus waiting for everyone to come back and working with first years, but I would love to be there. Sign me up. I could sure learn a lot. And I'm so grateful for you for just turning on a dime and coming in and sharing your work with us and some of the thoughts of where we'll go this summer with the program.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite, Hilary, and I hope all of you make whatever the right decision is. But Hilary's a wonderful, be a wonderful inspiration to all of us. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, my dear.
Okay.
Well, take care and we'll talk soon. We're going to go into the program structure now. So, you don't have to stay for that one.
Okay.
Take care and we'll talk soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So shall I just head on in there, Andrea, then? Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what Briony was sharing? Or, she's now left, but it's kind of a sneak peek. Oh, there's Lynn. Hi, Lynn. You're here. That's wonderful. Nice to see you. Yep. And you'll be with Briony this summer, which is wonderful. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about the program structure. What Briony and I were talking about is a part of the program, but not all of it. So this program is a blended program. So it has a combination of online learning and on-campus learning, beginning with on-campus learning. So next slide, please. And the way this program is designed, it starts with 3 courses that comprise a certificate. And then the rest of the coursework comprises a diploma. And then finally, the final, doing all of the coursework and a final research completion will grant you the MA. So the graduate certificate is 5 months long. It's a 3-week residency on campus, which is 2 courses, and then 1 distance-based semester, which is 1 course. So it's 3 courses, 9 credits for the certificate. Next slide. Yeah. So these are the courses in that certificate. 500 is an introduction to environmental understanding. And really, it's a beautiful foray into, reconciliation, regeneration, reimagining how we might be in relationship with the world. And there's an awful lot of outdoor component to that. And this is during the residency, and 503 is during the first residency, and it's Foundations for Environmental Communication, taught by Dr. Gio Takash, who's from our School of Communication and Culture. And these two courses seem diametrically different, yet they very truly complement each other. It's one thing to experience something, but then how do we speak about it? How do we actually take that and create, ways of articulating and standing in and building a case and expressing ourselves. And then the third course in the certificate, Learning Theory and Program Design, helps us to then design programs and teach out what we've learned. So that's the certificate. Next slide, please. Dennis, you're asking, can these courses be completed fully online for the graduate certificate? No, they can't, Dennis. There's actually the two first courses are purposely blended or purposely on campus so that, something happens on the in-person aspect of, being out in the natural world and working in that way. However, having said that, with COVID, we've been on Zoom for the last 2 years, so it's possible, but it's not the way that the program is designed. So 2 courses in the residency and then 1 online for the certificate. And then the diploma, if we just carry on here, is actually all the coursework. So it's just over a year long. It's not only the first residency 3 weeks on campus, but it's a second residency 3 weeks. And distance-based semester in between of coursework, and it's 24 credits. So here's the lineup of the courses. Next slide, thanks. So you've got the 500 and 503 from the first residency, 508, which is the Learning Theory, which is the first course, and that's the certificate. Then you dive into systems online, and then you move to your research methods course, and then worldviews and ethics. And then 509 and 586 are your second residency. 586 is the field school that Briony was just talking about. And 509 is what I teach. It's 2 weeks back on campus, diving into eco-psychology, which really we could say is a systems approach to psychology. So it's kind of like after you've taken systems perspective, eco-psychology is like systems too. So, and that's all of your coursework there. Next slide, please. So to get the MA, you'll do, it'll be a little bit more than 2 years because you're adding the research component. So you've got those again. Actually, we can just go to the next slide. Right, so we have all the coursework that you've done, plus the last 2 here. Either a thesis, 690, or 695, which is a major research project. And you'll need an elective course because the major research project is 9 credits, whereas the thesis is 12, and the whole program is 36 credits. So when you do the major research project, you can select an elective that fits for you, that satisfies a kind of gap. You could do an outdoor learning course, you could do an Indigenous relations course, you could do an information and society course, you could do a humanitarian course, you could do a directed study, something that complements and rounds out your applied research for the major research project. The thesis is more of the traditional thesis of 12 credits. Both have supervisors. The thesis has supervisor and committee and a defense after an external examiner has reviewed your work. The MRP is more applied in that it's you and your supervisor working together. Sometimes you're working with an organization. But MRPs can be anything from a series of podcasts, a documentary film, building curriculum, prototyping programs. It's very much active and applied. So they're very different. No one is better than the other. They're just different ways of completing the program. Right, so I guess it's, unless anyone has questions, let's see, can these courses, no, there we go. Okay, so I guess it's over to you, Andrea, for admissions.
Yeah, Hilary, I got a question about, actually there are 2 questions. The first one is about who are the people that are taking this program? Like how, who is taking the program? And the second question is about how people are able to manage the work and the course load. So if you can maybe share a little bit of those details.
So I'm just going to ask you, Lynn. Lynn, what is it that you are doing right now for a living, if that doesn't put you on the spot too much? I'm just curious. I would say that 2/3 of our participants are teachers or educators. So they're K to 12, post-secondary, sometimes outside the system, they're outdoor educators or kayak instructors or looking to increase their environmental understanding and bring that perspective. We have journalists, we have policy writers, government workers. We have people who have their own businesses, people who are working in government, a lot of teachers, that's for sure, and principals and etc. But then there's a lot of people who come from the communications aspect too. In fact, I have one student who finished this year, and she said she's a journalist, and she thought, I don't know if this is for me. It's probably too arts-based. So we had a long conversation, and she started with us, and she obviously finished beautifully. And in the meantime, she got 2 jobs teaching in college, which is what she really wanted to do. She wanted to segue from journalism to teaching more. And so by the end of the program, she'd actually had those opportunities. I wrote her a couple of letters too to help that process along, because she was just about finished her degree but didn't quite have it. So it's interesting when people want to move to a different area that has more of an environmental focus. This can be that degree too. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm currently a student in this program, but in terms of work, I would agree with you, Hilary. A lot of the cohort are teachers, which is awesome. But we have a pretty good mix. I myself, I'd consider myself a communications professional. And I actually come from more of like a corporate and community engagement side of things. And just like you said, Hilary, about wanting to have more of that environmental focus, that was my interest in this program. And quite honestly, after the first residency, I had fulfilled that desire, and I'm already on to new ideas and a lot of new learning. So if you're interested in sort of the deeper understanding about the environment, then I would definitely recommend the program. And you don't have to be a teacher or a communications person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I find that it's such a welcoming way of learning to go, to be in these residencies, the intensity, and of course, yet you haven't been face to face yet, Lynn, so you'll get that this summer. But just the whole notion, the way it's laid out is there's everybody is welcome. I mean, of course, there's always going to be the that goes with groups that storm and form and norm. And yet, this is a place of really being able to deeply dive. Our classes aren't enormous. And so there's a lot of one-on-one, there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning. There's not too many people who feel fish out of water, because everybody kind of gets welcomed in. Eventually we find our way, but it is a very diverse group. And yes, a number of teachers for sure. So what was the second question? Sorry.
The second question is how, if this program is designed for people that are working as this, if there's an option for people to keep working. I know you already shared most of the people are working, but maybe how a day of the online learning can look like.
Yeah, so it's ambitious. Let's just say to work and to learn at the same time is an ambitious undertaking, but it doesn't last a lifetime. It's just 2 years. So it's the kind of thing where you have to make a decision for yourself to say, you know what, probably not too much, I say next fix instead of Netflix, not too many movies, and maybe I won't be doing this or this, but I'll be devoting the next couple of years to my work and my study. And sometimes life gets to be a lot. Sometimes we have aging parents, or we have a new job, or we have something happen in our lives. And so this program has built-in leave. So if you need to take a breather for a month or 3 months or up to a year, there's no penalty for that. We stop the clock and you just catch up with the next cohort because we know life happens. But you know, it is designed to work. And so it takes discipline and it takes organizing yourself. And sometimes you'll be tired. But I think Lynn will attest that it is a whirlwind tour, and yet things change for you. You know, it is transformative just by the nature of how much you're investing and how much is happening for you while you're learning and as you're seeing the world change around you. We're really responding to both the beauty and the despair that we see in the world. We're interested in a really personally significant but planetarily significant education. So what you're learning isn't abstract. It's really applied to right here and right now. So it's very engaging. It's not like, oh, I got to go do that. It's, well, you might say that, but often your work and your assignments are directly related to what's happening in the world, what you're doing in the world, how you're contributing as we live into more of an ecological imperative. Yeah, I think that's what I'll say there.
Perfect. And we have another question from Mishu. Are the online courses pre-recorded and we can watch them after our workshops, or are they mostly synchronous?
So when we're talking about the online programs, usually it's very different for every different instructor, but usually you'd have a meeting time, a synchronistic meeting time. And most of the units are things you can do on your own until you get to that meeting time. And then there's team assignments, and it's all a little bit differently sliced with each different instructor. So yes, many things you can do on your own time, and it's not daytime. It's always scheduled so you can do your work after, you can do your learning after your work, and there's scheduled synchronistic time that we hope everyone can make. I mean, we have people coming from coast to coast, so we try to make the times work for everyone. Yeah.
And we have a question from Angela. So for the on-campus, you will come to Victoria, and then for the online portion, you can be from anywhere, in her case, in Mexico. Doing
anywhere. Yep, that's right. Yep. And then you come back the second year for field school and 2 weeks on campus. So 1 week in field school, 2 weeks on campus. And then you do your research from anywhere in the world. Yep. So you just come in for those 2 short times. Yep.
We have another great question from Ali. How do students based out of Canada find the course content? Is the content grounded in the context of Canada, Northwest Coast?
Lynn, are you still here? Lynn, I should pay you to be on this call. You'll need an honoraria. I wouldn't say that, and I mean, jump in, Lynn, if there's something you'd like to add. I would say that you know, our content is broad. I mean, so I'll speak for my own course, for instance. I'll bring in authors from North America, Europe, Asia, all points, because we're talking world here. We're talking a global context. I'd say some things when we're working on case studies or, you know, doing some role playing with a government issue may focus around something local or provincial or national for Canada. But we have students from all over, and they enjoy learning in this global context. And the more we have international students, the more of that context becomes richer in the classroom, bringing those perspectives. So we just really welcome international students. It's just a beautiful way for us all to learn more about the world. So I hope that makes sense. I can't really speak to every curriculum, but I mean, imagine worldviews and ethics. That's going to cover the whole globe. Systems covers the whole globe. Yeah, I would say even environmental understandings really reaches out and reaches deeply back into Indigenous history and Indigenous culture and heritage. Yeah. And then you saw that Briony's work will also reach into history, and there are Indigenous cultures the world over. So I think it's pretty applicable.
Hi, Hilary. I've been unmuted, and I just wanted to say that for those who are within Canada or outside Canada, there is value for everyone. We have a student in our cohort who is from South Korea, and she now lives on Vancouver Island, but it's fairly recent, and her value to our cohort is just unbelievable because she adds a different perspective. I would say most of the course content is not only related to the northwest coast of Canada. There's a little bit of everything, and you really dive deep, not into specific geographical areas, really. You dive deep into issues, and these issues are global issues. So if you live in Mexico, if you live in South Korea, if you live in Newfoundland, if you live in Alberta, like I live in Alberta, I've personally found application, and I know that my cohort has as well, and we're a diverse group. So
yeah, I'm even thinking of Tim way out on the East Coast. Yeah, that's right. Oh, and you've got folks from America in your group too, don't you, Lynn? That's right, from the US. We usually have a couple of US students. Yeah, but you're right. It's sometimes it's localized in a way that we're working on something, but it's got broader implications in the way we the way we design our learning. Okay, so is that it? Andrea, do you want to carry on, or thank you, Lynn? Wow.
Thank you, Lynn and Hilary. Great question. And if you have any other questions, please keep typing them on the chat box. I'm going to cover the standard application process now, but we will cover all your questions as they come. So when you're applying to Royal Roads, you are coming through either standard or flexible admissions. However, you don't have to choose which way you are applying. The person that is adjudicating your file will choose either or. So standard admissions are people that normally have a 4 years of undergrad degree in a related field with a minimum GPA of a B from a recognized post-secondary institution, can be a Canadian institution or anywhere around the world. And we're also at least looking for 2 years of relevant work or volunteer experience of a combination of both. If applicants don't meet the GPA, we normally recommend to complete the academic writing and critical thinking course offered fully online by Royal Roads University. What this course is going to do is going to prepare you for an academic program. Basically, what we want to make sure is that you are going to be successful while you are taking the program. Flexible admissions are candidates that normally don't meet the standard admissions requirements. So normally they have a combination of post-secondary institution and professional accredited qualifications. We are normally looking for 6 years of relevant work experience or the equivalent of a combination of education and experience. So as you can see, each of you might have a different path in your professional career, and we want to be mindful about that process. So we will assess each of your applications separately, and if we have any questions, we will reach out back to you. Once again, generally for the admissions, flexible admissions, we will require that academic writing and critical thinking course. And thank you to Alana that she has been shared the link on the chat box.
And I just want to add here that if you think you don't have these things, if you think you're just maybe barely missing some of these things, still contact us. You know, I love to speak with students, prospective students, about what the combinations are that they have. Sometimes we forget to give ourselves credit for things we've done because it wasn't paid or it was something we did a long time ago. But we're really interested in the who of you. Not so much always what you've done or the credentials you hold, but the who of you. We kind of joke and say that Mother Teresa could come to the MEEK program, whereas, you know, any other program, she might not make it because she doesn't have the credentials. But credentials are an interesting thing. We also want to hear from you to be able to see what it is that moves you to want to come now, because that personal statement is really critical. You don't have to have your research all figured out, but what is it that you really want to bring to this program, and what is it that you really want to have happen in your life? Why are you coming to this program now? Why you? Why now? And Britt says, psychology undergrad here. Would this be a good program for someone who wants to eventually? Yes, because you'd be working with an eco-psychologist. Yes, Britt, this would be very good. This would be right up your alley, probably. And I could put you in touch with others who have come through this program or who are going through this program. So I think you'd get a real depth of eco-psychology and outdoor ed, the confluence of that through the program. Go ahead, Andrea. Sorry.
No, and I think you did a great introduction about the supporting documents. So the first documents are official transcripts, and I saw a question from Angela about the transcripts. So we will require transcripts for any undergrad degree, or even though if you have done any credits in the post-secondary education. Those transcripts, they have to come in a sealed envelope. A lot of institutions give you the option to send them directly to us. So if you are not sure how you have done in the past, I highly recommend to request one package for you, and then the other package that you will send directly to Royal Roads. The detailed resume is the first document that is going to tell us a little more about who you are. As Hilary said, we understand everybody has a different path, and sometimes we underestimate the great work that we have been doing. So we want to know about your education, credit and non-credit, maybe education, any pro-development courses that you have done. And we want to know about your work experience and volunteer activities. In those two are very important that you give us a little description of that, in which capacity you were working, and also the time length. Sometimes the role of a project manager or coordinator can tell us a part of the story, but doesn't tell us what you have done in those jobs. We want to know about anything, like if you're part of any association or professional affiliation. So as you can see, we're asking for a lot of information, so we understand that can take more than 2 pages to tell us your professional story and career.
Right, but if you're applying to something where you want something to be transformative, then showing up with, all that you've got and standing there with, here's what I've done and here's what I'd like to do, and having that kind of conversation with us at the gate is a really important moment to be able to. It helps clarify. Often these things, when we write them, we get really clear that this is for us, or this is something that's really been in our, a psyche for a long time. So this is a really important thing, to spend a little bit of time on that application, but to get it in, just to get it started so you don't miss the deadline. And then the other pieces can come, right? They can follow. You don't have to send it all in at once. Is that right, Andrea?
That is correct. So it's very important that you start your online application and you start completing those documents as you receive it, as you get them completed. It's important to know that we will not be able to assess your application until you submit all the documents. So you can always start your application today, and if it takes you a week or 2 weeks, then after those 2 weeks that you submit all the documents, we will start processing your application. But yeah, that is correct, Hilary. The personal statement, I always said, I'm a Royal Roads grad, so that was one of my favorite documents when I applied to Royal Roads, because it's about, as Hilary was saying, it's about why is this program important? How is this program going to help you to move forward your personal and professional career? Also, what are you going to bring into the program? Where are you going to be sharing with others and teaching? I think what makes Royal Roads a very special place, and this program specifically, is that sense of community and how we are learning from each other. And there's a very specific questions that if you go to our website, you will find all the descriptions and all the documents specifics that I have shared with you. The last documents are 2 letters of reference. They can be one academic and one professional. However, if you have been out of school for a long time, you can always submit 2 professional letters. If you feel comfortable, please share your personal statement with the people that are writing those letters, so they can share a little more about the career path that they have, or the experience that they have shared with you. Key dates, we have deadlines coming up. So our next program intake is July 11th, and the application deadline will be April 11th. And after that, our following intake will be the next year.
I just have to laugh seeing these students. I love these students. I love our students, but I just love where this program takes us and how much fun we have. It's serious learning. And yet, we're also very casual by nature in this program. So it's a beautiful combination. But I just have to smile. I mean, those people, lovely. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Hilary. Now I have a big smile on my face just thinking about that learning opportunity and experience. Something I want to highlight from something that Alana shared is that for those students that are international, we recommend to complete their application and supporting documents at least 6 months before the program starts. So that will give us the time to process and assess your application, but also you will have the time to apply to the visa.
Yeah.
And financial aid. So if you have any questions about how about loans, awards, research scholarships, and other funding, we have a team that will be willing to connect with you and support you through this process. Depending on the program, if you're doing the graduate certificate, the diploma of the master programs, there might be different options available for you. Also, depending where you are located, the province or Canada or outside of Canada, that might be other options as well. So please connect with them and they can provide more details depending on your case. And if you'd like to connect with Alana or someone from her team, we have our enrollment team that will be looking forward to connect with you. We have a domestic team that they focus mainly in the people based in Canada or they are Canadian citizens. And then we have a team from the international side that will be working with you and support you if you are an international student.
And they're fantastic. They're all fantastic and they're very, very helpful and they really get to know each student. I mean, this is such a personal university. This is such a different place to come to school. And trust me, I've been at UVic, which I also loved, and at SFU, which I loved, but they're very big universities and you can get really lost. Here, we do know your name and you know ours. And so there is a real ethics of care that happens here that I'm very proud to be part of. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Hilary. And we have a few questions that I wanted to, I'm going to be asking you, Hilary, if you can help me here.
I'll actually answer Allie right now. Allie, a lot of people, not a lot, very few, start with the certificate. And then, by course 2, like the 2 first residencies, they usually say, I want to do the whole thing. But you can just start with the certificate if you like. But during the certificate, we'll want to ask you, do you want to go on and do the diploma or do you want to go on and do the MA? And while people might just want to start with the steps at the beginning, almost everyone converts over. Or you can do the certificate and then come back later and reapply and finish the coursework within a certain period of time or finish the whole degree. So yes, it's in laddered steps for a reason to fit your life. Go ahead, Andrea.
No, that is perfect. That was my first question. The second question is from Kerry. Is it possible to have an idea of the session start times, hours per week for those considering working at the same time as they complete the program?
Right. So when you're in residency, those are full days. You take holiday because you're not working when you come to residency on campus. You take holiday and those are full days, sometimes evenings. But when you're online, it's mostly asynchronistic. So you're working at your own pace and working on your projects and your assignments, but you'll meet synchronistically at least once, maybe twice a week, sometimes with your team, sometimes with the group, sometimes with your prof, but it's always at a time that's after your work, that's convenient for the cohort. So it's really built to be something that you can fit in with your work. So it's not interrupting your work. You're not madly scrambling from work to the next. But, when I did my first online course at Naropa, I really partitioned out my work. So when I closed my computer at the end of my, asynchronistic work that I did online. I kind of shut my computer and I rang a little bell for myself and stepped away. And then if I wanted to go onto email or do something with Royal Roads, I lifted my computer and pretended I was starting all over again. And it was a funny little ritual that I did, ringing myself in and out of my classwork, but it saved me. I went so deep with my classwork, but I also didn't compromise my work. Or my personal life. So you can really do it, but it takes discipline and organization. And sometimes it's intense, but boy, I don't know anyone who says it isn't worth it. You know, how else will we transform ourselves except through intensity and through things that metabolize us and shift us? And, first we have to kind of dissolve to things. I think it was Picasso, he said, we have to deconstruct before we can construct something. So there's sometimes we have to take things down a little bit to make room for something new to come and grow. Yeah. Yeah, my ritual was important, the ringing the bell in and out. Yeah.
Thank you, Hilary. There's a question about the component of the on-campus and the online. So basically the students will come the first year, 3 weeks on campus, then go fully online, and then they come back for another 3 weeks and then go.
That's not the end of the program. They have another year after that for research. So whether you're doing a thesis, you have until that next year's Christmas to finish. So after your summer residency, you have a year and a bit to finish your thesis in the program, or a year and a bit to finish your major research project. But because you're doing an elective with the major research project, after the second residency, you'll do a course, a 10-week, 12-week elective course, and then you'll start your major research project around December, January, and you've got a year to complete it. And it's really kind of that self-directed research with your supervisor or with your supervisor and committee for a thesis. So that's kind of when you sort of step off the whole cohort thing and you start to do your own work. Yeah. So it doesn't end after the second residency. It's when your research begins. Yeah.
Wonderful. So 2 residencies, one in the first year, one in the second year. After your second residency, you are going to be online doing either your elective course or your thesis.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, you do your elective and your MRP or your thesis. Yeah, that's right.
Perfect.
And you're supported all along. I mean, we're all with you the whole way along. You're not just out doing your own work. You know, I am your program head and research coordinator, and you've got lots of support along the way. Yeah.
And I know we have a beautiful quote here at the end.
Mary Oliver. Tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. She's a wonderful nature poet. She was a wonderful nature poet. And so this is one of our students too, who studies frogs. So just beautiful to include all our students in this. And thank you, Lynn, for being here today. It was just a blessing that you were here to speak about this program.
Thank you, Hilary. There's 2 more questions. Actually, I'm going to ask Alana to share the website to find the details about the cost of the courses. And there is another question from Mishu. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. Are there any TA jobs available for grad students who might need more funding? I don't know if you know the answer for that question, Hilary, or otherwise we can follow up with Mishu after.
Sorry, what was that? What was the question? I missed that. Sorry, I was typing to Dennis. He was asking me something.
Are there any TA jobs available for grad students who might need more funding?
Yeah, not currently in this program. We're not really big enough for that. Our cohorts are small. I'll have to run. I've got a 1 o'clock meeting that I am late for, but I've just loved the richness of these questions. There's a few people here I've sent my email to, but feel free to anybody contact me. I love to talk to students and where you're at and find out what's going on and if this is the right fit for you. And I do tend to know a lot of the programs at Royal Roads. I've been here for 17 years, and so I can help you find something. If this isn't the right one, I'm pretty good at finding, or sending you to some other good folks to talk to, and our advisors are excellent. So thank you, Andrea and Nancy, and thanks everyone for coming today. It's been wonderful. I'm so glad you were all here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Hilary, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us and we will make sure that we provide all the support that you need to make the right decision for the program.